City of Gainesville Public Finance Committee. Finance. All right, Madam Clerk, what's our first item?
Madam Chair, our first item is the adoption of the agenda.
So moved. Second.
Okay, there's a motion and a second. Is there a discussion? Hearing none, all in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, like sign, and the motion passes unanimously. Madam Clerk?
Madam Chair, our first discussion item for today is 2023-480 FY 2023 Mid-Year City Investment Performance Summary Report, with the recommendation that the Finance Committee review and accept the submitted FY 2023 Mid-Year City Investment Performance Summary Report and refer the report to the City Commission for acceptance.
Thank you, Madam Manager.
Yes,
You want
ma'am.
to introduce this for us?
Yes, thank you so much, Madam Chair. William Johnston is here. He's the Chief Investment Manager for the city, and he is prepared to present the Mid-Year City Investment Performance Summary to the committee.
Thank you. It seems like you were only here yesterday. But please proceed.
Thank you, Commissioners. William Johnston, I'm with the Financial Services Department, the investment manager for the city. There's a lot of material here. I'm going to focus on just the summary report, and then if you have questions, we can go into some of the other material. Previously, the committee and the commission had approved bringing these reports to you on a biannual basis. In the past, we'd done it annually. We went through a period where we were doing it quarterly, but I think we felt like that was probably a little too frequently. So this is the mid-year report as of March 31st.
Thank you.
The summary page breaks out the investments by our operating fund assets, which are essentially the city's cash, and then the pension and trust fund assets, which are longer-term investments. The way the report reads, the city's operating fund and investment assets are highlighted in green. Their benchmarks are highlighted in blue. Those are the standards that we measure performance against for the investments. Right now, the city's operating fund investments are split between the state Board of Administration's Prime Fund, which is essentially a money market account, and a bond portfolio that we run internally here at the city of, right now it includes callable agencies of the U.S. government. And you can see that returns for the fiscal year 23 to date, these returns are shown as annualized returns. That's the way the SBA Prime Fund is reported because it's sort of a money market type investment. And the fiscal year 23 to date return for that fund is 4.26%. The 12-month return is less because that fund's rates rise as the Fed fund rate rises. And so as the Federal Reserve raises their rates, the return on these short-term investments also increase. So the 12-month return actually captures some of the prior fiscal year when rates were lower on the account. Right now, that account is paying over 5%. And if the Fed raises rates again going forward, the return on that fund will go up. However, those rates are also subject to going down when the Fed stops raising rates and starts lowering rates. The bond portfolio, again, this includes U.S. government agencies like Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac, Federal Farm Bureau, things of that. These agencies, although they are not strictly guaranteed by the U.S. government, there is an implied guarantee there. And, they're some of the highest rated securities after U.S. Treasuries. And we tend to invest in these because they pay higher rates than Treasuries. And you don't have to worry about the underlying creditworthiness of corporate bonds when you're invested in U.S. agencies. For purposes of comparison, I'm showing annualized rates for this portfolio. And fiscal year 23 to date, the portfolio has earned about 4% in actual interest received and accrued. And the if you were not going to use an annualized rate, it would be a little bit less than half of that. We use the annualized rate just because we compare that to the SBA, and those rates are quoted as annualized. So, I think it's important to see how closely the returns are between those two options, between the bond portfolio and the SBA Prime Fund. The benchmarks that we use for the SBA Prime Fund, we show the Fed funds rate. We also show an S&P AAA AA Government Investment Pool Index, which is made up of money market type investment pools similar to the SBA. And then just for comparison purposes, the Bloomberg 1 to 3 year Treasury Index. That's really the correct benchmark to use for the bond portfolio. We show it for the SBA Prime Fund as well, just for comparison purposes. And, for our bond portfolio, you can see that the Bloomberg index has returned 2.34%. That's the actual return. So our bond portfolio, if you were going to show the actual return, not an annualized return, which means annualized just means you're looking at what that portfolio would earn over an entire year's period, not for the 6 months that it's actually been held. It slightly underperformed the Bloomberg index. However, for the 12-month period and for prior year periods, the bond portfolio would have outperformed. The Bloomberg index captures, when rates increase, they capture the loss and market value of the underlying instruments. And the bond portfolio yield does not capture that. We do report that on the second line where you see it's titled Bond Portfolio Market Value and Unrealized Gain or Loss. So the unrealized loss for fiscal year 23 is $1,765,000, and that's about 1.38%. That's a transitional loss. It's related only to the decrease in the market value of the bonds held in the portfolio as rates rise. So as these bonds mature, we're paid par, so we're getting all the principal back, and those unrealized losses disappear. Also, if rates were to come down, those unrealized losses would be lessened. But we typically hold our bonds to maturity, so we don't worry about unrealized losses. But the accountants have to report it, so they do pay attention to it. Any questions on the operating funds?
Any questions so far?
Not yet.
Okay, I'll move on to the pension and trust funds. The city has 3 large pension and trust funds, and then a small trust related to the Evergreen Cemetery. The General Employees Pension Plan returned for the fiscal year to date over 18%. That was a nice change from the prior year's return, which was down just over 20%. I've also included fiscal year 21 returns just to show you that it's been a volatile few years in the market. The General Employees Pension Plan was up over 25% in fiscal year 21. Typically, we don't see this type of volatility in the markets, but with the COVID epidemic and what's gone on with the economy and inflation, we are experiencing high volatility over the past 3 years. We would like to see a return to normalcy, but we're not really sure when that's going to happen. The focus of these pension plans and trust funds are long-term investments. No one really likes to see the volatility that we're experiencing, but we tend to try to ignore it because we're more concerned with the perpetual long-term return that these plans offer. And so in the details, that long-term return is provided for you. For the General Employees Pension Plan, it's earned close to 10% annualized over the last 30 years. And, we hope to see something similar to that going forward. So although, we don't like to see the volatility, we feel that for the long term, we're well positioned to earn a decent rate of return on these pension plan assets and trust fund assets. The Police and Fire Pension Plan earned a little bit less. The investment allocation on that plan is geared to be slightly less volatile because that's the way the board for that plan has voted to do so. So in down markets, it's going to lose a little bit less, and up markets, it's going to earn a little bit less. So that's the way that plan works. Over the long term, I think that the general pension plan will earn more on an annualized rate, but those board members seem to be more risk averse than we are. The Retiree Health Insurance Trust Fund has earned a little bit less than the general employees pension plan, but slightly more than the police and fire pension plan. It's up 12.3% for the fiscal year to date. Evergreen Cemetery is up almost 15% fiscal year to date. And, we show projected 23 returns, but those are really difficult to estimate given the markets that we're in. Right now there's the inflation concern, and the Fed, is determining how far they need to raise rates. They're sort of paused at the moment, but if inflation continues to be high, there's certainly a chance that they could raise rates further. The counter side to that is that by raising rates, there's the possibility that they push the economy into either a soft or a hard recession, and that would have a negative effect on returns. So right now it's a balancing act. The Fed is trying to raise rates enough to ease inflation, but not so much that they push us into a recession. And of course, there are other things going on like the debt ceiling limit and things like that. Again, we're not tactical asset allocation managers. We tend to look at the long term. We don't try to react to everything that's going on in the market on a quarterly basis or anything like that. And I think the plans are well positioned to earn good rates of return over the long term.
Okay, very good, very good. So we can expect to see some, pardon me? Okay. Thank you, sir. So we can expect to see some, an impact from what's going on now with the debt ceiling discussions?
Well, if they resolve the issue and they increase the debt ceiling like we hope they will, there shouldn't be too much of an impact.
Mm-hmm.
If they come to an impasse and, you see some, it's hard to predict what's going to happen, but I don't think that you'll see a default on U.S. debt.
Mm-hmm.
If something like that were to happen, you could see the markets collapse and be down 30 or 40%. But then, the other side of that is as soon as it was resolved, you would see them come back. That's the way the markets work. They go down, they overreact on the downside, then they come back, assuming that the economy is still decent. We're very hopeful that they're going to find resolution to the debt ceiling.
Okay, well, thank you. Questions?
I do.
All right, Commissioner Book.
All right, I have a question, Madam Chair. So I guess my personal experience here is I appreciate hearing you talk about the fact that you try not to look at the stock market daily, for example, so that in the long run, all these funds are stable for the employees who retire, spend time in the organization, and also provide some financial stability for the city as a whole. Going back to my personal experiences, 2008 and 2009, there was significant reduction in some of the pension funds, and some of the members in the city at that time it continued to stay in a fund that was very aggressive, and as a result, they lost a percentage of some of the monies that they were going to realize in some of the options that the city allowed them at that time. And it was because what they were looking at was those short-term gains that all of a sudden dropped, and the market dropped right out in 2008, 2009. And those who did absolutely nothing and stayed in these plans and opportunities that were provided for the city were fined 3 years later, because all of those losses had been made up and then some in gains. But the short-term ramifications of looking what was happening had people making decisions that were not in the best interest of them personally. And I think that's kind of what you're talking about as it relates to Mr. Johnston, the city. I do think these are very complex concepts, and I don't have the knowledge and expertise to understand how you pivot and do things and change in these very, very big funds and portfolios. But to the extent that the city is able to be innovative and adaptive, without impacting long-term growth, the city, and potentially having potential short-term, and by short-term, I'm thinking the next 1, 2, and 3 years, not the next 5 months. Those are things that we should clearly be looking at in these funds, and I think that's probably some direction that you get behind the scenes from our charters, because we do have to look at things differently when we're attempting to make up some deficits on the operating side. So that would be my comment as it relates to both long-term and short-term monies. 2 terms, I just wanted to ask, one I don't actually understand, so it's really for my benefit. The other one I just think is for the benefit of the few people who may watch is, you talked about in the bond portfolios, the underlying instruments, and I actually don't have the knowledge of what those underlying instruments are.
So the underlying instruments I referenced are U.S. government agency bonds. Those agencies, there are organizations that are sponsored by the U.S. government. Fannie Mae is one. Federal Home Loan Mortgage Corporation, which we call Freddie Mac, Federal Home Loan Bank, Federal National Mortgage Association. These are agencies that the U.S. government sponsors. Those agencies collect mortgages from all over the country, and they have 2 types of securities that they issue. They issue mortgage-backed securities, which we are not involved in. Those are actual pools of mortgages that pay monthly principal and interest. We do not invest in those. We have the ability to, we just don't see the point at this time to do so. They also issue debt. They issue bonds. The proceeds from their bond issues are what they use to buy the mortgages from all the banks regionally around the U.S. We invest in their bonds. And so these are they're like corporate bonds, except they're issued by these agencies which are sponsored by the U.S. government. They're not, it's not like buying AT&T bond or something like that. It's a U.S. agency bond. There are a couple of U.S. agencies that are backed by the full faith and credit of the U.S. government. The rest of the agencies, there's an implied guarantee that they're backed by the U.S. government. The government would never let these agencies default on bonds. That's why we feel like they make a good investment option for us. We don't have to worry about the credit risk of a corporate bond, whether this corporation is going to have revenues meet or not meet expectations for the next quarter, whether they're doing something that we don't know about behind the scenes. The bonds related to the U.S. government agencies are very straightforward. They also pay very competitive rates. So to us, they're sort of a sweet spot in the bond market where we can earn good rates of return and not have to worry about the credit worthiness of the underlying organization.
So I think I understand. In essence, what they're doing is providing us some vetted stability, in those portfolios related to bonds.
We could earn slightly more by investing in corporate bonds, but given the markets at the moment, we think it's better to err on the side of caution.
Well, that's probably very, very wise in the long run. And then just a term that I think I do understand, but so when you look like at our chart, someone will look at the one negative under the same area, the bond portfolio, which is the $1.7 million. But what you spoke about was that's unrealized value, meaning until you cash it in, it actually has it's
Right.
neither negative nor positive. It's when you decide to cash it in, and we take those bonds to their conclusion. And so when they're mature and we cash them in, it's not going to be this figure.
It will be zero. We will be paid our full par value on the bonds when they mature. So that unrealized loss, unless we were forced to sell, which we would not be. We're not in a situation like a bank, some banks got in trouble recently because they had invested in bonds like this. They were investing in other types of bonds. They lost value. They lost a lot more value. And when you're a bank, you're subject to your depositors coming in wanting their money back, and that's what happened there when a few of these banks failed. The city's not like that. We don't have, these banks had 90% of their assets invested in bonds. We don't. We have less than half of our assets invested in bonds, and we could quite easily go much higher. We could go to 60 or 70 or 80% and still not have to worry about cash flow. Banks are different, but yes, the unrealized loss is guaranteed to go away if we hold the bonds to maturity.
Right. If we cashed it in today, this is what happens. But we in no way, shape, or form are doing that, because that's not how you deal with bonds.
Right. There's no reason for us to do so.
Thank you, thank you.
Thank you.
Madam Chair.
Right, Casey, anything? All right, I have a question. If we wanted to make improvements at Evergreen Cemetery, where would we go for funds?
I would say you could probably use this fund. My understanding, there's an ordinance that specifies exactly what this trust fund can be used for, and I believe it references operations and maintenance of the cemetery. But that may be a better question for the
I'll
city
go to the
attorney as to,
I'll go to the attorney.
it may depend on what the project is.
Actually, it's the department, but operations and maintenance, he's correct.
Okay. Well, this would be operations and maintenance. This would be maintenance.
So I would say this fund would be where you could source that cash from if you needed to.
Okay, all right, thank you. All right, gentlemen, what I'm thinking about is, thank you, sir, is the cemetery can be a revenue generator, but I think there needs to be some work done. And I'm wondering if anyone would consider referring to the Evergreen Cemetery Committee and asking them if they have recommendations on how we can better market or invest in the cemetery for a higher return.
I think it's, I'm sure, I think it's prudent. We're in a time where we're kind of looking at all of our assets, and this is one that particularly we probably don't think of in the same way. But it is an asset.
Yeah.
And, it's still a functioning cemetery, correct?
Well, it is, but we're operating, but not at a competitive rate.
We're undervaluing the properties and the plots and the lots that we're, can't do that.
Yeah, that's why I'd like for it to go to the committee and let the committee come back with recommendations to us.
Isn't it our largest cemetery within the city limits? Evergreen?
I don't know if it's the largest, it is the least expensive.
We have the two cemeteries that are right next to each other. And I think that, is Evergreen the largest of the two?
Oh, it is of that.
Isn't
yeah,
it?
Yeah, yeah. It gets confused with the other one, but,
Yeah.
and again, that's how you market. It's not clearly identified where one starts and the other one stops.
Yeah. Well, that's true. I don't think people recognize that there's two cemeteries out there at all.
It's not recognized. Madam Manager?
Yes, ma'am. I know the department is here, and yes, there is the advisory committee who could probably give us some recommendations on how to proceed based on what's happening on that particular asset. Does the department have any information that you'd like to share? Otherwise, we'll, seek some information from the committee.
Hello.
Hello, committee. Leslie Ladendorf, Assistant Director for Parks, Recreation, and Cultural Affairs, and I am very intimate with the Evergreen Cemetery. It is 56 acres, just so you know that's how big it is, and it is the most affordable cemetery in Gainesville, I will say that. We raise our prices every 2 years like we do with the Appendix A, so it goes up 5% every year, every 2 years. The maintenance fund that they were talking about is maintenance and operations, but there is some restrictions to it, so we can only pay for certain things. I will say that this last fiscal year, we just actually are operationalizing a new cemetery software. So we did a full inventory with Brecca's team. We did the audit to do a full inventory of every space that was in there and to identify how many spaces we had available to sell. And then we'll have a new website through this cemetery software where people will be able to go on and actually see what spaces are available to purchase, which ones are filled, which ones are pre-need. So they'll actually be able to see that on a map. So it'll help us do a lot more marketing for selling the cemetery. The board it's not an advisory board, it's a Friends of board. So it is a membership association that is an independent 501c3, but we meet with them on a monthly basis and they do give us a lot of information and provide us some feedback and give us a lot of help and assistance and some funding for different projects.
Okay, so Friends of the Evergreen.
It's the Evergreen Cemetery Association of Gainesville, Inc. That's very long.
I guess it would mean, Madam Chair, so these are very passionate advocates and they're very, very familiar. So to that extent,
They are.
I think.
I'd like to hear from
what
them.
you said, absolutely. I think
Yeah.
anywhere we look that brings us close to what we should be charging without trying to make us, essentially overcharging people, but getting good value and still something that's meaningful, I think is a great idea that you came up with.
Okay, well, I would still like to refer to the Cemetery Committee, Association, Friends. To get their input on marketing, pricing, their recommendations on things we can do to include improve the revenue stream. Thank you, and come back to us.
And no motion would be necessary, Madam Chair, do you think, or no?
Well, you can make a motion.
You will?
Well, it's not an advisory committee, so it's not direct.
Just refer
True.
it to the manager. Okay. All right, you got it. Thank you. All right, anything else? Any other items? This is a very, very long meeting. No comments from the committee, then I'll go to comments from the public.
Madam Chair, I do have one speaker, Mr. Donald Shepherd.
Mr. Shepherd, please come forward.
Hi, my name's Donald Shepherd, the People's Representative, and as the People's Representative, there's a lot of issues within these stocks and bonds that are available for you, that hasn't been made available to you, and I think that this board should have been left in the hands of the finance board that we used to have down in the Leslie Klein room here in the City Hall, so that it got the proper input of what's needed to move forward. I didn't bring my books today showing what it is on the stocks and stuff, but I'm seeing a different outlook of the stocks than what has been presented. And far as the cemetery, that their board is also willing to update, and that we think that it should have been moved to one seclusion where both cemeteries were looked at under the same umbrella or the same web site. Therefore, the information could have been more marketable. Also on the let's see here, the employee pension plans, back in 2009 and throughout the years, these pension plans have been robbed by the people who were in charge of them. And this here has been in our books dictated, and this here has been something that employees have lost everything because of it. We had a Chinese woman that was.
Okay,
in it.
let me
Ma'am.
just interrupt you for a moment. I don't think that the report before us today bears out what you're saying at this time.
That it don't,
Okay, so,
but, yes.
so then, therefore, I would have to stop you at that point, because it doesn't bear out what you're saying right at this
What
point.
you've been presented with, from what I have on my website, has totally been different.
All
And
right.
that's what I'm saying, ma'am.
Okay, if you want to, if you would like to bring your information at the next meeting, and you can present it in the 3 minutes that we have, then that would be fine. But today, what you're saying does not bear out what we have before us.
I'm a facts person, so what I present in words and in paper are actuals. And so with that comment, where we are, my time's up, so I'm gonna seclude. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much. Okay.
Just a quick comment.
Yes.
So-
Mr. Book.
Yeah, thank you. So, Mr. Shepherd, when I was looking, we were just presented a piece of what was like 8 backup items. I don't know if you've had the chance, you're
Okay.
pretty savvy, so if you've looked at those all break this out in some greater detail, some of those do. And so there's actually some more information, if you've already seen it, then you may want to provide what you have. Probably best would maybe be, you could provide it to any of us, I don't know, Madam Chair.
Any of us.
But otherwise, I would take a look, because there's actually some more comprehensive information that backs up this backup in there at the moment. I think probably what we just saw was really almost like an executive summary
It is.
of that comprehensive amount of information.
It is a professional summary.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
But you are correct, it is different, and that's what I was talking about, sir, ma'am. It would take, I don't have a computer, or I do have a printer, but I don't have a computer to, I did all this info, on my own, and, so if, I would like to comment that, I will look into that and see if it's viable by my constituents to take and move forward with this. Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, ma'am, for allowing me more time.
Oh, you're
you.
quite welcome. Okay, is there any further business then? Hearing none, then this meeting is adjourned.
Right.
I'm sorry, I got one more.
Madam Chair, you still have a vote, and
I got the vote.
our speakers are concluded for. Okay.
Vote. Is there a motion to accept the report?
I move we refer the report to the city commission for acceptance. We accept the submitted summary report and refer to the city commission for acceptance.
I second that.
Motion and a second. Is there a discussion? All right, hearing none, all in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, like sign, the motion passes. All right, now, next item.
Madam Chair, our next item is 2023-487, fourth budget amendment to the FY 2023 General Government Financial and Operating Budget Plan with the recommendation that the Finance Committee, 1, review the proposed budget amendment resolution, and if acceptable, 2, recommend that the City Commission adopt the proposed resolution.
Yes, Madam Chair, members of the committee, this is the 4th amendment to the budget. We did the 3rd amendment back in March. Today, Susan Board is here. She is the budget manager for the city. We have some amendments before you that recognizes new revenue and also appropriates that revenue along the general fund. I believe we have special revenue funds as well as special revenue grant. We have proprietary and capital funds that will require receipt of revenue and an outline of expenditures in this amendment. Mrs. Boyd, please.
Madam Chair.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. Okay, so this, as Ms. Curry said, is the fourth amendment to the 23 General Government Financial and Operating
All
Plan.
right, could you lower your microphone just
Sorry.
a little? Thank you. Thank you.
Okay. In the general fund, we are allocating fund balance for $1.35 million, which was a set aside for Lot 10 proceeds, which the closing happened back in January of 2021. So the proceeds were put into the general fund, and now we're allocating those funds out. As part of that agreement, we're putting those funds into the special revenue fund for affordable housing. $1 million will go to affordable housing, and $350,000 will go to public improvements. Then we have an allocation of $1.3 million of fund balance for non-departmental general government for reimbursement to GRU for overpayment of indirect cost. I think the final amount on this, we're still trying to determine that. We have a deadline at the end of the month to get that paid. We are returning $240,000 to fund balance for funds that were carried forward from 22 for equity and inclusion for some office renovations that did not happen. We're allocating $80,000 for fund balance for equipment purchases and transportation. That was a carryover also for fiscal year 22. And then we have $26,702 for the city auditor's office. This was an increment that was approved as part of the fiscal year 23 budget, but did not get uploaded when we were uploading our budget. So this is a recurring increment they have for computer software. This also includes transfer of some funds from a couple of general capital project funds in the parking garage to reimburse the Vision Zero program for some expenses that they paid for in fiscal year '22, and transfer of funds to fleet management for public works and parks and recreation for purchase of some vehicles. Expenditure adjustments between departments, which require no additional funding appropriation, include $652,000, which is transferred from the Strategy Planning and Innovation Department that was reorganized to the Office of Management and Budget. So this is the final piece of moving those funds over to the new department. And then we had $12,000 that was part of that also, that was funds that were allocated for GPD as part of, when they were part of SPI. And those funds got carried forward at the end of '22 and need to now be moved over to the police department where that technology group is. In the special revenue fund, we had new revenue coming in for the Transportation and Mobility Program Area Fund of $414,000. We had $1.25 million of funds for projects from '22 that needed to be carried forward, so that was a reconciliation and carry forward. And then we had $1.5 million, which was a reallocation of existing program funding to new projects and programs. We also allocated $250,000 out of the tree mitigation fund for the Southeast First Avenue Tree Preservation Program, and $216,000 for Loblolly real estate purchase. Those were both tree mitigation fund. I'm kind of bouncing around, sorry. We had $230,000 in additional revenue from the Hogtown Medieval Fair that was over and above what we had budgeted for revenue, so we're recognizing that. We have $190,000 of fund balance from the Street, Sidewalk, and Ditch Improvement Fund for Kirkwood subdivision. This is pavement program, so those funds were specifically to be used on Kirkwood, so Public Works will be allocating funds for that. GCRA is allocating funds for the Fifth Avenue for the set-aside for the University House on Northwest 13th Street. Parks is allocating additional funding for the Arts and Public Places Fund. Then we had a carry forward for the busking program, and then about $7,000 for the police and fire for donations that they receive throughout the year. So we usually allocate those each quarter. In the special revenue fund for grants, we had additional new revenue appropriations for grants in the $10.2 million. And then there was fund appropriations for some matching funds that we moved from other areas from transportation and mobility. These grants, if you want me to run through them, RTS has $8.5 million for the Florida Department of Transportation. That's their capital assistance 530C and 5339. This is a grant they get every year. Then they had a $660,000 for the Department of Transportation for bus stop enhancements. That was required, and matching funds of $330,000. And they had another $420,000 grant from the Florida Department of Transportation for pedestrian amenities for the bus stop shelters. And again, that also required matching funds. Public Works had a grant for local agency program agreements for project management for sidewalks, curbs, and ADA for $558,000. The police had their ICAC supplement for $496,000. Fire Rescue had a Firehouse Subs Public Safety Foundation grant for purchasing thermal imaging cameras. And then Parks had $18,000 for the from the Children's Trust for the fiscal year '23 teen midnight basketball program. In the proprietary funds, Public Works allocated $950,000 for the Stormwater Management Utilities Surcharge Fund for the Florida Burn Park for restoration of flood control levee. This was a planned project, so they're just now allocating the funds. And then we reconciled their NPDES, which is the National Pollutant Discharge Elimination System programs, with their current existing funding. And then the final one was the internal services funds. These were transfers into the fleet fund for purchase of vehicles. There was transfers in, and then there was an allocation of fund balance for a purchase that did not happen in '22. That's
Thank
it.
you.
Can you go back to capital project? I believe you
Yep.
skipped.
Yeah, you skipped that.
Did I? I'm sorry,
Yes.
apologize.
I was about
Okay,
to
sorry.
Say that too.
Too many
We're going
pages.
through.
The big one, right? Capital projects. So in capital projects, we allocated 1.4 million. Wild Spaces Public Places allocated 1.4 for new projects at Bulwer Springs, Tom Petty Park, the Park and Field Lighting Improvements Project, the Hippodrome, and the Clarence Kelly Center. Then this is where you also see the 1.35 million that's being transferred into the Special Revenue Fund for the Lot 10 proceeds. So it's being transferred into the Capital Projects Fund. There was also some transfers between Wild Spaces Public Places for to fleet management and to, again, the Arts and Public Places program. So that's the other side of that you'll see there. And then there was a transfer from, the Capital Projects Fund for the sidewalk construction. Then we had funding in two different funds, so we're consolidating that into one fund, so it makes it easier to keep track of it. I think that's it. Sorry, I skipped that one.
Commissioner Willetts, is that it?
I have another question, thank you.
Yes, go ahead.
Madam Chair. So for the capital expenditures on Wild Spaces, Public Places, the Hippodrome we've started, and I know that's ongoing. Park and Field Lighting, I'm real familiar with Tom Petty Park improvements. What was the Bulwer Springs? How far along in that project are we? Is this kind of the initial for study and planning, or were we already doing improvements there?
Bulwer Springs, Roxy, would you or Leslie want to comment to that?
I think we were doing something there.
I'm trying to remember.
I think we had started last year.
Or that's it.
Yes,
was,
we started last
It was
year.
last.
Yeah.
Madam Chair, Commissioners, I'm Roxy Gonzalez, Director of the Parks, Recreation, and Cultural Affairs. I'm glad I showed up today.
I am too.
We're actually, this is for the conceptual planning. So we're right now starting the design phase. We've done the community engagement. We've also now have established a conceptual plan with the organization and the agencies, and now we're working with the company to do the full-on conceptual plan to get that in front.
So that part was approved last year,
Mm-hmm.
correct?
Yes,
And then
And
going
then-
forward after that, we're gonna have to look at a whole bunch of
exactly.
what we're going to do and when and sequentially as Wild Spaces Public Places dollars come in.
Yes.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure because that's the biggest chunk here, and it's not something I'm as familiar with exactly the steps of where we were at on it and the movement from, a dream, a very vague dream, we'll say, to something a little more concrete. So, yeah. Thank you, Madam Chair.
All right, so it goes to the feasibility of doing it. Question? Yes, Commissioner Book.
No question, but I was just thinking on the Wild Spaces, Public Places is, I think the next time they'll be talking, Commissioner Wiltz, will be the June 8th GPC, so there'll be probably some more opportunity to weigh in on what that development project's going forward, right? Isn't that our next tentative date would be June 8th, is that right, Madam Manager? So, that's probably gonna be a really good discussion, because we'll be looking at a lot of things that are
I
gonna
agree.
vastly outweigh the amount of dollars that we have based on the projects we're gonna do, but that would be a good one. Thank you.
All right, Susan? Anything else? All right,
Thank you.
thank you, thank you. All right, is there a motion?
I'm thinking out loud,
Yeah.
Madam Chair. Give me just a second. So with all the funds moving around, many of the things that are interdepartment billing or interdepartment transfers, those are net neutrals to us. Those move from one area to another, and we heard about a few of those. And then you have some funds that we didn't expend. They've come from various charters or various areas, and they end up in the fiscal year 2023 budget. What's the big picture for any of those? And many of the funds and many of the different monies that come in also have specific ways that we can expend them, we know. So a capital expense has to be a capital expense. A staff expense, based on coming through, can only be spent that way based on both law, statute, policy, and procedure. Are any of the big funds that we just heard about that are unrealized monies that are now coming in for fiscal year 2023 back to the budget, do those end at September 30th? I'm really looking for the big picture because I know you take those into account as we move forward. We'll probably hear more about that on Thursday.
And Commissioner Book is always trying to find revenue for us.
excuse me, some of the monies that we talked about today are rollovers. A lot of them are rollovers. You may want to expand on it. Some of them are special revenue, and they don't end within a fiscal year. They roll over. So a lot of what you heard about today are funds that span fiscal years, particularly in the special revenue fund, in the grant fund, and the proprietary funds.
Right? And those have to be spent in the specific ways that they're designated, whether they roll over or not. I mean, that's always the case.
Very much so. Capital projects as well, very specific.
That's it. I was
That's
just
it.
kind of
That's-
thinking out loud as far as where the monies come from, those that come back, as we have things that are, so you don't spend monies on certain things and they roll over into next year, but to the extent that some of those move forward, I know those are those very small pieces that are part of a much bigger puzzle. So, thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Okay, thank you.
And Madam Chair, we'll need to move this forward to a commission meeting, so.
Correct.
a Motion, yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am, correct. Yes, that's what I was turning to.
Madam Chair, we do have one speaker, Mr. Donald Shepard.
Mr. Shepherd.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, thank you. All right, if there are no further questions, is there a motion?
I move we,
Here it is,
This right here.
the Finance Committee.
all right, I move we accept and recommend the city commission adopt the proposed resolution 2023-487, fourth budget amendment.
Second.
Second.
Motion and a second. Is there a discussion, further discussion on it? All right, hearing none, then all in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, like sign, the motion passes. Okay? Thank you, Madam Clerk.
Madam Chair, our next item is 2023-522, Ironwood Golf Course Budget to Actual Analysis for FY23 second quarter, with the recommendation that the Finance Committee receive a budget to actual analysis for Ironwood Golf Course for the second quarter of FY23, period ended March 31st, 23.
Yes, Madam Chair. On this item, members of the committee, we are going to place going forward this item on Finance Committee agendas in order to comply with finding 11 out of the State Auditor General's findings, asking that more transparency be given around the golf course operations. About a month or so ago, we presented to GPC, but we wanted to get in the cycle of the Finance Committee to actually make this report. And so this will be the first one before Finance, and Roxy Gonzalez, the Director of Park Recreation and Cultural Affairs, is here to provide this
And
information.
bring us up to date.
Yes, hello, how are you? Okay, so as stated by City Manager Ms. Curry, the audit report recommendation is for the city to provide periodic financial reports for the Ironwood operations to the City Commission for discussion, which would allow the City Commission to periodically assess Ironwood's financial activities and provide necessary to make informed decisions about the Ironwood operations. Based on the unaudited financial data, as the second quarter of fiscal year 2023, period ending March 31st of 2023, the Ironwood Golf Course operations are currently experiencing an estimated operational deficit of $72,453.49. Staff will continue to monitor the operations and provide quarterly updates to the Finance Committee. So that's pretty much where we're at there. So if we all look at the budget versus actuals, according to quarter two, we're budgeted for $640,648.35. Sorry, that's the revenue we made. We made $640,000 with a total expenditure for that up to that quarter of $713,101.84. So that leaves us with a deficit of $72,453.49. That's all I have in informing you all what has been going on thus far.
Questions? Thank you. Yes, Commissioner Willets.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So this is 6 months of operation. So to have a public golf course and everything that we do there, in essence, it has only cost the city $72,000.
Yes.
Okay, and we are, for the revenues, this is 63% year-to-date of the amended budget, and this is but only 50% of the way through the year, is that right? Or?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, and I'm not a golfer, is there some seasonality of our revenue stream at the golf course that I don't know about?
Sorry, repeat that.
Seasonality
Seasonality.
of revenue in,
So revenue during the summer tends to be a little slower due to the increase of rain, as well as the heat. So our biggest heightened season in the golf course is really fall, winter, and then a portion of spring, pending on how the weather is acting up, whether it's too much rain to be out there or not. That tends to fluctuate a little more.
but it's not like you sell more concessions during the summer or
No.
because that's driven by how much people are going, which is probably green fees is.
Exactly. Yeah, the concession's driven on appearance and presence at the golf course. Same as pro shop.
Do driving range, do you get more of that in the summer? Because for students, young people, I don't know. Because that's the one that's just a little lower than percent of amended budget. Green fees, concessions, they kind of appear to track cart rentals a little ahead of that. Those kind of all kind of track together a little more closely, which makes sense because you go do all of those things at once. But the driving range fees appear to be a little separate.
Yeah, so the driving range fees are separate due to the fact that there's lights out there. So again, that all varies on weather, right? So there's going to be fluctuality in what happens. So everything's going to go in ebb and flow, depending on how the weather is, how hot it is, how many mosquitoes are out there. So all that varies depending on the weather and the climate. But the golf course is open till 10 p.m. with those lights. So it all varies. Now, there is and has been attempts in different type of activities and programs to try to help increase the revenue. But those also come with expenditure costs, right? So it's unbudgeted. It's like you spend more to make more. So that's kind of where that falls.
Okay. Thank you, Madam
Thank you.
Chair.
All right, Commissioner Book, I see your light.
Yeah, I was just thinking, kind of along the first, when Ironwood was purchased many, many years ago, for about the first decade, I think the discussion, and it might have even been serving, the discussion was always about its value as a recreational facility versus a revenue generator versus other recreational facilities. And I know because it does require high maintenance costs, Mr. Rector, it tends to operate in the negative, but I think what you might have been alluding to, Commissioner Rhodes, is it operates in the negative, but probably not in the negative compared to other recreation facilities that may be free.
I like the way he said it.
Like a Depot Avenue park, a Northside Park or something like that. And that made me think, don't they charge some surcharge for some infrastructure, which may not be,
So there's a surcharge, and surcharge for the replacements of the golf carts. So every so many years, the golf carts need to be replaced because the battery expires or the maintenance that's done. So we have a contract with the company that we apply whatever we make according to surcharge to replace how many golf carts that are in play.
and are those monies in the operational deficit also? Is that's
Separate.
separate because that's essentially infrastructure. I don't know we're calling it capital, but I'm assuming a cart may in fact be considered a capital expense.
And it's specific, it's a special rule.
Special revenue.
It's a special revenue.
Stream. So the surcharge is special revenue specific to the infrastructure. So this 72,000 would be separate and distinct from that.
Yeah, the surcharge does not reflect in those reports.
Okay. Any idea what the value of that would be? Because those are monies coming in to deal with some of the costs in a different way.
It's approximately $5 per course fee, or however it gets applied, approximately. And the last we checked, it's an approximate for this fiscal year that we've looked at. We have approximately 230,000 is the last I heard, approximation, because we're in process of replacing the golf carts. So that will be brought in front of commission for approval before we go and replace the golf carts, because we need the commission's approval to do so.
That's significant. So you basically have 200 and something thousand in the positive, specific to some infrastructure at the course.
And it's multiple
That's
years.
not considered in this 72,000 deficit.
Right, but multiple years. So that's surcharge of multiple years that's been added up to be able to meet the end date of the golf carts. So it's not that in this year alone, this is how much we've made. This is, I believe it's a 2 to 4 year surcharge. So every 2 to 4 years, we total that up to replace the golf carts with that.
Right.
So it's
You
not
use it as
just,
the need, if I'm understanding. You kind of use it as the need comes up, so it's almost like a tree mitigation fund.
yes,
It's a fund that you use, you need to
Way to
replace
look
50
at it.
carts in 2 years. So that's when all of a sudden you spend down that money that's in there.
correct.
Okay. Okay, I understand.
I know. We're,
I'll,
we're
I'll
on the
just
way.
keep it with non-sarcasm, but yes. All right, well, so that's important to know, because I think from a recreational facility standpoint, it is in fact a recreational facility, and in transparency, I'm not a golfer. I go out once a year for charity.
For a tournament.
And for a tournament, for charity, and do something, but I do think that there's a lot of programs that are there with the, seem like the courses that have closed in our area, West End, Gainesville Golf and Country Club,
Did Meadowbrook
and,
close?
thank you, and Meadowbrook. Does that potentially offer I'm actually asking for speculation on the, does that offer the opportunity for more things to occur out there at Ironwood? What's your thought there as a Parks and Rec director? You can look here, and then you look here, but
So, to respond to that, I'd like to say,
yes.
yes, it would offer more opportunities. But these closures didn't happen recently. So I think that's, we would
well-
have seen the impact, and we would continue seeing the impact. What didn't happen this year alone for us, at the end of the day, there's a deficit. So we do have more participants out there. There are more people utilizing the golf course than there have been in the past. There is a increase in the revenue, but we're not meeting the cost. So, and like the statement of we got to spend more to make more, that's where we're established, right? Because the more people we get, the more maintenance we have, the more O&M costs, because we have to maintain the grounds, make sure the grass is green. Golf is very picky for that. Appreciatively. And then the overuse of the driving range. Now we're in process of overchanging the mats at the driving range because we had more usage on there than expected. So those things come to play with more use, which is why it's hard to reflect that onto a report of such. Because the more, like I said, the more you get in usage is the more you spend, which is how much you're making more. But if we compare the revenues that's been occurring on an annual basis, we have gone up on revenue, but we've also gone up on expenditures.
Okay, and so but I think we only have 3 golf courses in town. The University, Hale, and Ironwood. Is there another one that I'm missing? Turkey Creek, so 4.
Hale isn't in the city.
It's not in the city. And is Turkey Creek in the city? Okay. Hogstown?
Hawkstone.
Okay. All right, but it's not in the city? No.
No.
So the only 2 in the city would be Ironwood and
UF.
UF. Okay. Well, one thing that Gainesville does not suffer from is a lack of golfers. We have a lot of them. I am looking at your rental revenue. So did we make 15,000 the year before in renting that for tournaments, what have you? Because-
So I don't have that information on, but I
Yeah.
can say that it's not just rentals for golf tournaments.
Okay.
That's also room rentals. So the building itself gets utilized for various rentals, from birthday parties, wedding receptions, a variety of different things.
Yeah.
From city businesses operating in there as well. So
Yeah.
it's a good combination of all, and I don't quite have the actuals.
Well, I'm in an organization, some organizations that have contributed in that space because it's used a lot. Ironwood is considered a very good rental space. And I wanted to compliment you on seizing that as a revenue.
Thank you.
Can expand there because it's very reasonable. Could you explain the handicap services?
So the handicap services, I think, do you know more about handicap and golf? I don't have that information. I'm not that
Okay.
in tune with golf. I do know that it's not what it seems like when you
No,
see.
I know.
Okay. It's not for
It is a
handicapped
term
individuals.
specific to golf.
Right. It's a term specific for golf that I do not know.
Well, he's a
off the top of
golfer down there.
my- Wait, Steve might be able to help. He's the golfer.
What did he say?
He's the
Expert at
golfer.
the end
So I
of
was
the
like, wait, you
table
know
here,
this
I
term.
think.
Mr. Barwell, can you please tell us your
I
handicap?
think our attorney is
It starts with
our
my
attorney is
swing.
a golfer.
So,
No?
I do not golf. I
Oh,
should.
okay.
so,
Okay.
so the handicap services, you can pay to have the course track all your scores and generate a
Okay.
PGA handicap that you can use in tournament play.
That
So-
seems to be profitable. No, it's not, Dave.
No.
It's nothing to do with ADA. I would like to, I think I'd like to get more information, more detailed information here, because I think we do well with the concessions, the rental revenue, the handicap services, thanks to Steve. But I think if we could get more information. What'd you say?
Permit fees, they could charge permit fees for the handicap, and that's not being instituted, we should be more revenue.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. All right. So at our next meeting, of course, this will be a regular on the agenda, but I think if we can get a more detailed report, because it looks like it's on its way to recovery.
I was thinking, so my last comment, Madam Chair, would be, it's a finance committee, so it's kind of interesting that we've talked with this degree related to a golf course, but it is again, our only
a revenue
recreational
generator.
facility typically that's looked at as a recreational facility that then generates money. And so things like fleet extension, in the long run, those can cost you. So you're talking about like increased maintenance costs and infrastructure costs. But fleet extension, even on something like a golf cart by 1 year, may permit us to extend their life and thus reduce the costs in a select fund. It does come down the road sometimes with sacrificing the long term for the short term. So I understand. And same thing for vehicles, right, across the organization is you have to be careful when you talk about that because you really have to closely look at what are the maintenance costs as you get out in years 5, 6, 7, and 8 on the vehicle side versus what you might save by capital infrastructure replacement. And that's a real delicate thing to compare. But it may be, at least on the particular surcharge that you were talking about, Madam Director, maybe something you look at. It's not a great discussion to have because there are costs that come with that. Just like you say, increased use comes with increased maintenance costs. On the other hand, we want increased use. And overall, it does bridge the gap. So those figures start to align as you get increased use. So that's more a comment than anything. Thank you for the information you provided.
Thank you.
All right, thank you, Commissioner Willis. Yes, go ahead.
Madam Chair. As far as golf, and I know this is looking at the money, but in the future, we're going to be looking at next year's budget. Our needs assessment for Parks and Rec, what did it tell us about golf?
There was nothing in
If it
there.
wasn't
It's
mentioned.
very low.
Yeah, it's very low on that.
Yeah.
Yes.
As I remember it. And so does that help us look to the future and inform future budgets?
The needs assessment does. Absolutely.
Okay, because I think, we always want to be as accurate as possible with our budget, with some ideas of growth, because this could be a potential, it doesn't take too much for it then to become net revenue in, which I think we would be interested in, obviously with the limitation that to create some of that, you got to put more into it, whether it's marketing, and I don't know how much we give you for marketing of
Well,
the
that's-
golf course.
Yeah, that's my question. Do we market the golf course at all.
So-
I can't remember seeing anything on
So I will
TV.
tell you, the golf course is probably the best marketed thing we have. We market on the radio station daily, the sports radio stations. Actually, our golf manager is one of the voices on the radio station that markets it all the time. We market it through UF. We also, there's social media, and one of the best sources of marketing for golf is through our software system called Golf Now. So it markets that not just locally, but nationally. So you can be anywhere in the world and you're just traveling through Gainesville. You put what's the closest golf course and it'll hit with a rating. We were highly rated on that Golf Now software. So it says one of the best golf courses in the area is Ironwood. So they will go there and play. So we are marketed very well for the golf industry.
So one more with that. Is there enough room to co-locate some pickleball courts there? Maybe our pickleball players will pick up golf and become a revenue stream for us.
So
That's only partially a joke.
as the director of Parks and Recreation, Cultural Affairs, I'll say unfortunately there's needs there that would need before putting a pickleball court there, such as parking. When we have big tournaments, big events, parking, we're making parking in the swells and doing the best we can with that. There would need to be a parking enhancement to do that. We don't have it. If you look at the acreage of the golf course, it's like in the shape of a hand. So it's not where we can just plop a square, an area to do something of such, unfortunately.
Okay, like I said, that was only a partial.
Yeah.
I'm thinking ahead, but thank you, Madam Chair.
Madam
you.
Chair, if I might intervene. Just this discussion around the golf course will become a little bit more prevalent as we move into our budget discussions and our budget workshops.
Yes.
The golf course now is a part of the general fund. It used to be an enterprise fund, but it didn't work out. And so it was moved into the general fund. And a part of why the state auditor wanted us to present more and make sure that the commission is aware more of what is happening, because it is, I think, golf courses across, in Miami-Dade, they never really ran a profit, if you will. And so transparency is the word that I think we all caught on to when the State Auditor General wrote his finding. But we will be discussing it. It has been running a deficit in the general fund. I think the last number we had was close to 300,000 approximately. That it was a draw on the general fund. You may want to comment more on that in terms of historical, but it will be something that we'll be discussing based on where we are with our budget.
Yeah, I don't have any further comments from that.
Okay, could you explain an enterprise fund?
Yes, ma'am, the revenues and expenditures should basically balance out, and there should be a dividend, to the
Self-sufficient.
general fund, should be self-sufficient.
All right, thank you. Further questions? All right. Let's see what we needed to do with this one.
Madam Chair, if I may?
Yes.
We do have one speaker before you move to vote,
Okay,
Mr. Donald Shepard.
Mr. Shepherd, your comments on the golf course?
Yes, ma'am. Donald Shepard, for the record. What I wanted to bring to you is that the lack of attention of the revenue outlook hadn't been followed through. Lauren Pohl had put an item on the list of things that we needed out there. The parking lot was not on that item of the agenda. And there was a, what would you call them, a house-like thing that was supposed to be put out front on the left side to take and have for weddings and other entertainment things. The comment is about the parking lot. The parking lot is being the shape of the hand and outlook of that. The front area of the golf course of Ironwood, that their area could be filled in and be used as a parking lot. And correction of the drainage of what is concurring in that area, this would be a great enhancement and a great opportunity to get more revenue for this additional parking entity. Also, I thought that we should do handicap pass thing should be something that when people come in there to pay for a fee for the handicap pass, they can pay anywhere from $10 to $35. That there bring up our revenue for the golf course and for be a split amount of money, partial for the government for the golf course and partial for the revenue and taxes and other things. Also, I see the restaurant area could be enhanced. We could make a add-on to the building to have a restaurant area within there, which would be much more feasible than just sitting in the bar area, and would be more pleasing for the customers that come there. I have a customer that's been there, coming there since the place was open. His name was Tom Mohan. He recently passed, and he took and had a revenue of $35,000 that he was participating within the golf courses in Gainesville, and so that's lost revenue that we've concurred.
Okay,
So
thank you. Now,
that's all I have.
all right,
Thank you.
thank you so much. Thank you for sharing.
That concludes our speakers.
Concludes our speakers, all right? No further questions? Is there a motion? You got a
We
question?
need a motion to accept the comment.
Comment for the motion?
Yes. Thank you, Madam Chair. And thank you, Madam Manager, for mentioning this is coming up in budget. And for a full year, it is operating deficit in the past, $72,000 deficit for half a year. If it's on the exact same pace, that's 150,000. And so when we go forward, it may look a little different. And right now, if you say, oh, for a full year, it's only $72,000 to put on who knows how many rounds of golf and probably some charity tournaments and whatnot, and a place for people to do events, keep people in the city as opposed to going out of the city for their golf needs. So I appreciate that this is coming back, and particularly once you have quarter 3 and 4 on there, it starts to look a little different than just right now. And that's why I asked about seasonality as well, because if it's that we already passed our main revenue season and then it's all downhill, and so to some degree there is, from what I'm hearing, there is some seasonality to the revenue, or at least the playing of golf, and so there's probably seasonality to the revenue as well. So we'll see as we get further into budget, and it'll be particularly interesting the next quarter. We'll have before we approve budget for sure, we'll have quarter 3. So I look forward to that, because those conversations, it looks good halfway through the year, of course, and then at the end of the year, may look a little more different because this is more seasonal as opposed to some other departments that perhaps, they don't really have revenue per se, but our expenditures are very solid, very normal. We budgeted up front. There's not a lot of surprises. So this is somewhere where it potentially has some surprises. So thank you, Madam Manager.
Thank you. Now, before you make a motion, I'd like to add to the report that is brought back that the charity tournaments, if you can go back to last fall and give us the charity tournaments from the fall up to the spring. I think that would be your most, the period of time that is most used for that. If you can include that in your report. Okay.
I don't think we need a,
Madam Chair, if I may, you're just receiving an update for
Yes,
this one.
thank
so
you.
Send a vote.
Okay.
Before you make that motion, Commissioner,
We're just receiving the report.
I
yeah.
figured it sounded to me like it wasn't just charitable things. We may just want just a more robust report.
More
of What are the
robust.
functions that are going on there, period, and what
That's a
those may
good-
look
good
like,
point.
whether it's a youth program, a charity tournament, rental of space for something.
Other programs,
Programming.
yeah, rental
Programming.
is very important,
Yes,
because I
ma'am.
think that's where the community
agree.
really comes in.
Programming.
Programming. All right, Roxy, you have something else?
just so that I get the direction a little clearer if possible. So pretty much for the detailed report, breaking apart, instead of having general rentals or general play, kind of breaking apart what those plays entail or what the rentals entail. So having, X amount of room rentals and then X amount of tournaments? Or do you want, just out of clarity, because I want to be as detailed as possible, but not too much, if not need be.
Well, what I'm interested in is if you've got 6 golf tournaments in September, from September to December, I'm interested in seeing that.
Got that.
Because that's the community using the facility.
No, that's understandable. Yeah, it's just we
Yes.
have tournaments that are charity tournaments and for-profit tournaments
Well,
and
why don't
high
we just
school
look
tournaments.
at tournaments? Why don't we just look at tournaments?
Tournaments in
Just
general.
look at tournaments.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, because you asked me detail, I have kind
I'm
of
sorry, just
categories.
look at
That's why I was
tournaments.
curious.
If I,
Yeah.
Madam Chair, I think I agree. It's just the full use. On a lot of
Full
other
use.
statistics, you bring in statistics, I don't know, how many hole-in-ones at the disc golf. I don't know, whatever
Got it.
the real service it provides. Because this used to be an enterprise fund, perhaps we always look at just only dollars and cents. But now that it is in general government, it still provides something, even though it mostly funds itself. Any other operation, we would look at, the number of children served and how many smiles and everything, right?
All of that.
So tell us a little bit, tell us a little bit about the number of golfers out there. And hey, I'd love to know the number of holes in one, right? Fun times. But, the number of tournaments, so we get a sense of what it means to our community to have it there.
Yeah, and if your golfers are increasing, are they decreasing? And all of your rentals, very interested in who's being rented to. What
Okay,
types.
we'll draw something up like that. Thank you.
Thank you. Does that
No, I
answer
agree
yours?
with Commissioner Willis described it accurately.
Yeah.
What's the breadth of services to the extent that we're able to figure out what's happening there and describe that value to the community?
Okay.
Yeah, thank you for that.
Thank you. So, Madam Manager, then this robust report we won't receive another 3 months, is that it?
Well, in terms, Madam Chair, members of the committee, in terms of the financials, we'll have to wait for that term. Because I think it would be July, right? The next 6 months. And so that we would wait on, but some of the other information, Ms. Gonzalez, we could probably gather that report pretty quickly. But not the financials, because
Right,
the next 6
right.
months won't take us out until July. Steve?
Ms. Curry, we plan to do a formal budget to actual presentation on a quarterly basis that will incorporate Ironwood into that. We can separate it, but right now we're targeting the August
Okay.
Finance Committee meeting, and then you'll be getting those quarterly things just like we used to. We feel we're in a position now, thanks to Ms. Wong and her staff, that what we're getting out of Workday will add value, and we'll keep the commission up to date on those quarterly.
So the next 6 months will take us through July. We'll be ready for a report in August.
That's our plan. That is our hope.
So do
Okay.
you want to bifurcate? Do you want to have the information on the programming at the golf course pretty quickly?
Well,
and
I
then-
think the commission will be looking at this.
Yeah.
And I think we want to give them a very good picture, as much as possible.
All at once?
Yeah, all at once.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I've never had such a detailed discussion on a golf course. So, thank you. All right. Madam Chair, Madam
Madam
Clerk.
Chair. Madam Chair, we have a member comment next.
Gentlemen? All right. Our next meeting then is August 29th at 1 o'clock. Do I have
Correct.
anything else?
That's it?
That's it.
That concludes our items for
That
today.
concludes our items for today. All right. Thank you. So this meeting is adjourned.